Me now from Atlanta is LaTosha Brown, a grassroots organizer, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you. I am in awe of this woman. I'm just going to let you know of the work that you do, living in buses and RVs and getting so many people out, really, really doing the work that many people talk about. She actually does it. So hello to you, and let's start with, and thank you for joining us early in the morning. Let's start what happened in Georgia. Does Warnock owe this win to Black voters, LaTosha?
Yes, let me tell you what Warnock did. What he was able to do is build this broad-based coalition. He had AAPI voters, he had labor union workers, he had progressive whites, independents. He was able to pull this broad-based coalition, but there is without a doubt that his base vote were Black voters, that Black voters came out in record numbers throughout the metro area, but also in rural areas throughout the state of Georgia. And I think that is what pulled it over for him. So Black voters absolutely showed up and showed out on this particular election.
Okay, but let's talk about Black women, though.
Black women did what we do. You know, I think it's really interesting because I think in this election, what we saw a narrative that was saying not just Black women, that Black men would not come out. And what we saw is that Black men also came out and supported Warnock in record numbers. Black women and men were actually on the ground leading these efforts, that it was grassroots organizations. I can't tell you how many organizations, from fraternities to sororities to churches to civic engagement groups. It was a beautiful sight on the field. What we saw, this was clearly a collective effort, and we saw Black people literally step up and stand up and do a lot of the organizing, and Black women absolutely were on the vanguard and on the front of that.
So let's talk about that. I mean, listen, this was in November. I think in November, the numbers were about 90% of African Americans in Georgia who supported Raphael Warnock. I would imagine it would be similar last night. I heard, again, this is not a CNN poll, but this is what I've heard. That this is a poll from November, 90%, all right, 8% for Walker. But I understand even last night or yesterday, it was fewer African Americans voting for Herschel Walker. Many have said that Herschel Walker, his candidacy was an insult to Black voters because he is just simply unqualified, and someone was picked just because they were Black and a star in Georgia, and they thought that people would just get out and vote for him just because he's Black.
Absolutely, Don. I think there were three things that made the difference in the election, particularly the Black voters. One is I think that Black voters were actually upset, and they were petrified that here it is, this candidate that they plucked out of Texas, that the Republicans thought so little of of Black voters, that they thought they could pick up and pluck a candidate who had ran a ball, who was a football player, that in some way they could prop him up, and Black voters were going to fall for that. You know, I think the other thing is he was so disconnected that even just recently, a few days ago at a rally, he referred to himself. He talked about how he was called a coon and that a coon was the smartest animal. That's such a racist, derogatory term that had been used in the South to Black people. Matter of fact, if you go back into the 60s, that Dr. King, oftentimes that racists who were in position would actually call him Dr. Martin Luther Coon. Oh, I mean, Dr. King. So here's a man that was so out of touch with our community, that was so disrespectful of the plight of Black people, that he actually would have referred to himself in a racist, derogatory term and embraced that. The second thing is that Black voters did not forget SB 202, which was the voter suppression law, that we did not forget that what happened, that we were actually targeted right after the last Senate election, and that there were laws that were created through this SB 202 law that would make it harder for us to vote. And case in point, that last election, we had 9 weeks to vote. That was truncated to only 4 weeks of early vote this election. We also had the Secretary of State, the Republican Secretary of State, the constitutional officer that is supposed to actually lead and govern the elections, that is actually supposed to get people engaged and informed to make sure we have a strong democracy, actually sue so that we would not have a Saturday voting day because of a Confederate holiday, Robert E. Lee birthday. What Black voters wanted to send is a resounding message that no, we're not going back, that we were offended, that we were strong, and that we were gonna make a difference in this election. And I think that's what we see. We see the results of that.
I have to ask you, because we said that we would ask you this question regarding the President Joe Biden. And listen, he's not polling very well, but still, he's getting a lot accomplished, his agenda. People are looking to this election saying Joe Biden is winning, and so there may not be a choice for Democrats come 2024. Is there a connection there? Do you agree with that sentiment?
I do. I think that at the end of the day, I think part of, and Black Voters Matter has been very clear about this, that oftentimes there's a paradigm that elections are about the candidates and the political parties. I think what you see happen in Georgia is that while those are factors, this is an election that is about the people. And I think that what we're going to see is that just like with the polls were wrong, and many of us said it, that there was not going to be a red wave, that literally there was a blue wall that was rising up. I think you're going to see the same thing, that people are not stupid. We're tired of seeing folks that actually are taking for granted our vote, and that we're organizing ourselves. And we're here to say what happened in Georgia was not a fluke. It was the future.
Listen, here's what LaTosha Brown, they do. They get people out to vote. They don't tell them how to vote. They educate them on the issues. Black Voters Matter, and also Fair Fight as well, and a number of other groups, the same thing. The reason I say that I have respect for her is because she actually walks the walk. How long did you live on a bus, traveling throughout the South, registering voters?
Technically, we're still living on a bus, right? We still have a runoff election
From
in Louisiana.
2020?
Yes. No, but seriously, we have been going all across the state. We are committed. We're committed in our state. We have the lowest minimum wage in the country. Our minimum wage is $5.15 an hour. We have 1.5 million people who are without health care. We have real policy needs and desires in the state. And as long as literally we have those needs, we're going to do the work. We do the work at Black Voters Matter 365 days out of the year. Why? Because our people matter, because our communities matter.
Thank you for being a patriot. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for appearing. LaTosha, be well.
Thank you, John, for having me.
Okay.